What is the 3 reasons?
They're on it. You gotta scroll down. Hey, what's up, YouTube family?
Hi.
What's up, Facebook family?
What's going on?
We're back again for another Relationship Thursday.
Oh.
Yes, this is what I'm doing.
I don't want to hear
I'm
this.
sorry, baby. I got this one. I told you to put your phone on silent. So we're happy to be with y'all again for another Relationship Thursday. We're hoping that everybody is having a good week thus far. We'll go ahead and jump right to this thing. Let me rewind that thing real quick. Let us know if y'all can hear us. Let us know if y'all can hear the grooves that we got playing right now. Let us know that all is good in the neighborhood. We'll give y'all a second to come in. Let us know where you're coming in from too as well, so we can give you a shout out.
Yeah.
So at first she was hating on it, and now you're saying that you're kind of grooving to it. Okay, I see you.
Yeah. I'm still not feeling it.
I'm trying to see what's going on with Facebook. Why people not popping up? What's up, Queen P from Jacksonville, Florida?
Together, I don't know the words, but I'm gonna act like I do. You don't know. You don't.
I do so. Yeah, probably like connected on Facebook.
So tonight, guys, we're going to be talking about something that might make you feel a little vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
What you call the title of this thing?
What did I say? I'm afraid of intimacy and I need help.
I don't know.
I'm afraid of intimacy and I need help. So if you find yourself in a space in your relationship where you, hey, what's up, Valeria? You find yourself in your relationship where you're kind of struggling with this whole intimacy piece. This right here, this live stream, is definitely going to be beneficial for you this evening. So what's up, Hartford, Connecticut? Mona Ray Diaz. So we are inviting you to tune in, but also please share, y'all. Please share. I'm about to. But I'm waiting to see what the deal is because it seems like
there's a disconnect somewhere.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk tonight. You gonna check that out?
Yeah.
We wanted to talk tonight about intimacy and how
I wonder if I'm on the right page.
Difficult. You about to pause the thing? It's gone.
Yeah.
So our YouTubers, our faithful YouTubers, we're talking to you, Queen P and Rita and Danielle and Mona Ray and Valeria as well. So we were okay. You see me trying to figure stuff out. We wanted to talk to y'all today about intimacy, and we wanted to talk about.
Why do you keep on cutting that down?
Because it's distracting me.
Okay. Hand me my phone.
It's distracting me. Okay. So essentially, what we want to examine this evening is how do you show up in your relationship? What the heck? I can't get this off. Whether it is your current relationship, or if you're looking back at the history of how you've been in relationships, how do you show up? You show up one of 2 ways, generally speaking. Generally speaking, you show up one of 2 ways. And I like that Queen P just went on ahead and put it out there. She said, I definitely need help on this subject. All right, let's just keep it 100. Are you vulnerable? Are you open? Or are you self-protective and guarded? And, successful relationships require you to show up a certain way. And even when you mean well, but your mind, body, and spirit is doing something different, it doesn't matter about what you mean. The relationship is going to get the consequence of how you showing up. And so that's what we want to posit tonight. That's what we want to ask you tonight. Like, how are you showing up? Are you open? Are you vulnerable? Or are you protecting yourself? So we're going to go over this evening some reasons, just a few reasons. Intimacy might actually feel a little dangerous to you. It might feel a little dangerous. Everybody say, and that could be the case. So I just want to again shout out Mona Ray, who's in Connecticut, and the ATL, and I see Paris, Texas in the house. And so I always the DMV is representing. But I just want to say, I just want to first of all just kind of start out by asking y'all, like straight up, How many people think you have a problem? You may not be able to define the problem. You may not know exactly how to articulate it fully, but you think you have a problem, or maybe your partner has a problem, or you know, something like that with intimacy, with getting close. Intimacy, we've defined it like this before, and I'll do it again this evening. Intimacy means into me, you see. Into me, you see.
I see, Ben.
Even though you was getting on my nerves today.
Likewise.
Lord have mercy.
Likewise.
At the end of the day, I can trust that my husband sees into me, and when he does that, it's a safe place. So how many people feel like, you know, intimacy is a problem for me? It's a problem for my boo-boo.
I'm like wondering, like, what are y'all doing?
He over here doing some extra stuff.
I think I turned it.
What you do? Don't what? Yeah, we messed it up. Okay, but I like how some folks are saying, yes, I know I do have a problem. And so we need to look at that this evening, and we're going to get started by, again, just establishing the fact that a relationship, you're always doing this little thing, a relationship, and we're starting, if you're watching on Facebook, we're getting started late with you guys because there was something going on. So you have to join in and catch up a little bit. But a relationship is, that's distracting me again.
Come on now, boo.
It is.
So number one, we haven't even done a proper introduction.
I just want to say this though. A relationship is nothing but an arrangement if there is not intimacy in the relationship. If the goal is not closeness, if the goal is not to open up, if the goal is not to figure out how you can increase your ability to show things you are not used to showing, to say things you may feel a little uncomfortable saying, and to hear stuff and feedback from people that you're not used to feeling, then straight up, you know, like, what is this? It's an arrangement. So I want you to first just start out this evening by asking yourself, am I in an arrangement or am I in a relationship? You know, and so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Intimacy is the core ingredient of a good relationship. And if you ain't got it, you just got an arrangement. You got an arrangement. And we have to really kind of put that thing to ourselves and ask that. So I'll pause. Our Facebook folks, we had y'all coming on a little late evening because there was some technical difficulties, but y'all are here. And I see Tamika in the house. I see Marjani. I like that name. East Orange, New Jersey in the house. And of course, our sister, Fine 29, is always representing. I see Washington, Port Angeles, Washington, representing tonight. So tonight, for those who are just joining us, we are talking about intimacy, and we're talking about whether or not you're scared. Like, are you really about it? How do you show up in your relationship? Do you have an arrangement? Or do you have a real relationship? And we're going to talk about and explore why intimacy may feel a little dangerous to you. You know, like, where does that come from? How you get like that? How did you become that way? Where you actually might respond to advances from your partner and advances from your partner to really kind of explore you and get, you know, closer to you. You might actually perceive it to almost be a threat. And you got to be able to just kind of like know what's up. You got to know, like, that is kind of my makeup. Can we turn the music off? Lord have mercy. The music is
killing you.
That John is killing me. I'm trying to set the
vibe, bro. I'm trying to set the vibe because what we're talking about is
we don't have that John on for a minute.
We're talking about intimacy, but the Facebook people, they're just joining us. So we're talking about intimacy.
Well,
this song
y'all
is
just
about
got to catch up. We had to turn out.
I love it when we're cruising together. That's essentially what the song is about.
Go ahead, let you break that down.
About
Baltimore, Maryland, I see you.
The song is about touching, connecting, getting close, and really understanding your partner. As my wife just mentioned a moment ago, a lot of people struggle in this area. A lot of people struggle with a K in this area. Yes, I do. I still got a plan.
Do y'all hear it? Y'all want to hear it. You just got to play it real
It's so important, y'all, that you be intentional about revitalizing, rekindling the intimacy in your relationship. If it's died, if it's fizzled out, if it's no longer sizzling, you got to make sure you be intentional about getting that thing back, kicking and popping.
But again, you got to start with, do you have an arrangement or do you have a relationship? Some of y'all been married for 10, 15, 20 years. All you got is an arrangement. Well, you know, some of y'all, you know, you think you and your boo are so connected and so whatever, and you don't even know. All you got is an arrangement because they ain't feeling you like you feeling them because you are in denial. We have to first start with just what is it that you have in the first place. And once you can get clear about that, then you can know like how did I get here? Is it me? Am I like keeping the intimacy from me? Some people, you know, not some, but most.
Well, man.
Can we turn the music on? Okay. Yes. So a lot
kind
of
of special this evening.
Well, whatever. Like music's been playing for like 25 minutes.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
So most of us, we push away what we actually want. We sabotage what it is we really need. And we don't recognize that we run people away when, and all the while we're like, why are they like that with us? And that's why they're not somebody you're dating, or is somebody, you know, that you are in relationship with and have been in relationship with for some time, or you're married. You can be, again, in an arrangement where you all really don't have that intimacy. And so, again, if you're just joining us, we're going to talk about some reasons tonight why intimacy might feel dangerous for you. And this should be a clue for you as you hear a few of these reasons this evening as to the work that you might need to do going forward so that you can kind of get yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's like, get your life. You know what I'm saying? Go get your life. You know, you may not have been in control of everything that's happened up until this point, particularly as a young person and as a kid, but you're an adult now. Mm-hmm. So go get it, right? And that means that you have to first start with awareness. If you are just joining us again, share the video. Share the video. Yeah. Please let somebody else know that we're talking tonight about some good stuff. And intimacy, even though we focus on relationships, love relationships, man, this thing goes to every relationship you can think of. Mm-hmm. You can take everything we're going to talk about this evening and you can look at how you deal with your children, how you deal with your mother and your father, or your caretaker or guardian, the person who cared for you, how you deal with people when you meet them. You know, how willing you are to kind of like stretch out of your comfort zone and try to make a connection, right? Versus just stay in a place of safety. These things that we're going to touch on tonight in terms of the fears that happen, you know, these things, they transcend just an intimate relationship.
Hey, what's up, Michael? Thanks for sharing the video. As my wife just mentioned a moment ago, please share this video. We know that you'll get some information that you can benefit from this evening, but we know there's other people out there that's on your timeline and your newsfeed that could possibly benefit as well. So please share the video.
Yes, and I see you, the tailor-made man. I like that. North Carolina in the house, the tailor-made man. And I see you, Brendan, representing Baltimore and the Caribbean. Yeah, honey, you always representing the Caribbean. I just don't ever know if I'm saying your name right. Malika. You know, just you know what, you're going to send me an inbox and be like, let me give you the phonetics. Diane representing Kingston, New York, and of course Ayana in Baltimore. We got similar names, girl. Shawnette from the ATL. So again, let's go ahead and just get into this thing so y'all can see, you can get your life. You know what I'm saying? I had to get mine a long time ago. You know, and every now and then I still got to remind you to get yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you still getting yours too. You had to get yours earlier today.
No, I did not. No, I didn't. Well, that's something completely different. Yeah. I don't have nothing to do with this. You try to like get a fake, you know what I'm saying? Try to call me out.
Yeah,
like,
kind of sort.
Yeah, you did. No, not kind of sort.
All right, y'all.
All right.
So when it comes to this whole intimacy piece, what do you all think of? When it comes to intimacy, what do you think of?
Well, it sure ain't plugged up. It's the charger. This thing about to die.
You can use this right here. So when it comes to intimacy, drop some words in terms of what it is that you think of. I see Queen P. She says intimacy is scary. Mm-hmm. Okay, definitely so. Mm-hmm. In some respects. What words do y'all think of when you think of intimacy? Based off of the work that we've done with couples, we're both, and this is one thing we didn't say. I see Queen P. She also said sex. One thing that we didn't say is that we are licensed therapists, and even though we're licensed therapists, this right here is not therapy. We've been together, y'all. For those who don't know us, we've been together now for 23 years, married for 15. Michael over there, he said vulnerable. Yes, indeed. Intimacy. Fine 29. Vulnerability, safe sex zone or safe zone connection. Jones Mister says, she says sex. And Coco Rose says vulnerable. Okay. So when we talk about intimacy, y'all, many of you have mentioned words that come up when we're speaking about intimacy. When it comes to the challenges surrounding intimacy, what we've identified is that, especially as it pertains to the couples that we work with, is that a lot of people perceive intimacy to be a danger zone. A lot of people perceive intimacy to be a danger zone. And so they've gone throughout their entire lives crafting and creating this wall to protect themselves when they engage in relationships. And so they see intimacy as a danger zone, so you half-heartedly engage in a relationship. It's almost like you sticking your toe in, not willing to stick your whole foot in.
Right.
It's like you're just trying to stick your elbow in, but you're not really trying to jump in and put your whole body in the situation. And so again, intimacy means that it's a danger zone, because for some people, to be intimate means to drown. It means to suffocate. It means to fundamentally die emotionally in the relationship, because you're now being exposed. You're now being seen, because the cost of intimacy is really vulnerability, or the route to intimacy is vulnerability.
So I want to say this, and I thought that this was good, but before I'm going to read a little piece to you guys that I thought was really good, that really talked about how is it that we get to the place where we are as adults, where we have this makeup that is either looking for the closeness, is open to the closeness in our relationships, or we're kind of like, not so much. And while definitely our previous relationships that, you know, that we've had with, and, you know, in our dating life and that kind of thing, all of that stuff makes an impact. But fundamentally, what the research has shown is that it really comes from our childhood. And the way we think about it as clinicians is, what is your tolerance for intimacy? And that there is a certain tolerance level you have for it, because the more you feel whatever feelings get evoked when someone is reaching out and showing some level of intimate emotional connection, you know, the more you feel like, oh, wait a minute, this is something that might be taken away from me. This is something that I might not be able to maintain. You know, and again, it's not conscious. It ain't like you having these thoughts concretely in your mind, right? It's going to be a betrayal, right? Those things are based on what happened in childhood. So let me read this really quickly. Rightly or wrongly, is that a word? That's what it's saying here. Rightly or wrongly, your so-called formative years teach you how much trust is okay to place in others. Okay. Bottom line, it's when you're a kid. So if you perceive your caretakers as manipulative and inconsistent in their messages to you, if you perceive your caretakers as regularly betraying you, if their behavior towards you was neglectful or disapproving or rejecting, then however inadvertently, even though they didn't intend that, they literally taught you that the world that you inherited and inhabit is untrustworthy. They literally taught you that, because that's the first place that we get our blueprint from. And you know, oftentimes when we're doing our work with folks, you know, we don't even put labels to it like that. You know, as adults, we don't say, you know, my mom was pretty manipulative, but she was though. But we don't say that, right? My father, you know, he would often betray my trust and not come through. But we don't, you know, it's like, oh, like, you know, some people do because they're just like mad and angry, whatever. But those of us who still maintain some level of relationship, you know, we can't even put that label on it oftentimes because we're still trying to maintain some connection. And what I would just want to throw in here real quickly is that until you name it, until you acknowledge whatever it is, if you don't acknowledge it, you will not be able to change whatever the impact has been to you. What's up, Stephanie? I see you. Julia, I see you. You know, you have to be willing to name what it is. And we got to disconnect from whatever we think that means. Oh, then I'm saying that this person is horrible. No. But if they were manipulative, if that's how you experience them, then that's how you experience them. If they were betraying you or neglectful, not responsive to your needs, it's not even always that they were doing it. That is what your experience was. So oftentimes we can take away some of the charge from that by not making that person responsible. That's just how I experienced it. So I'll say to my husband, I'm experiencing you as, which means that some of that may be what he's bringing to me, and some of it may just be what I'm projecting onto him.
That's true.
At the end of the day, it don't really matter. That's my experience. We need to talk about that. You know, so if you think about it in that way, then it becomes a little less daunting to really call it what it is. But yes, our childhood, that's where we get the blueprint laid for how it is we're going to show up in our relationship. I said at the beginning, if you didn't hear this early on, either you show up and you are vulnerable, or you are in a self-protective kind of mode, and that's your MO. You might be with somebody for 20 years and your MO is protective. You know, you come through like this, right? And you might be with someone for 2 weeks and you're just as open and vulnerable. All of that is based on your childhood blueprint and DNA. So
and it's important to be balanced in that experience. And so what my wife is mentioning is absolutely correct. And the thing that I want you all to know is that your childhood DNA informs how you engage in relationships. And it also, to some degree, is a predictor in reference to the relationship that you're going to recreate as you get older. And so, you know, what I often say and what we as clinicians like to say is that Your childhood, in childhood, you establish, you experience some sense of normalcy, regardless of how dysfunctional your childhood may have been. And so when you get older, when you get older, what you end up doing is recreating what you consider to be normal in your childhood. So even if that experience was dysfunctional, what you end up doing is recreating that. Actually, you don't always necessarily recreate it, but there is a response to that trigger. And so a lot of people recreate it, and a lot of people just straight up, reject it completely. But again, it's a response to the initial trigger. And so for those of you who are finding yourself in a situation where, let's say, for instance, that because you learn to engage in intimacy in relationships in your formative years by being codependent. If your parents were alcoholics, if your parents were substance users in terms of like hard drugs, if you had somebody who made you or put you in a situation where there was some parentification that was present.
What does that mean, Boo?
So when it comes to parentification, it's talking about, or I'm talking about, basically you raising your siblings. So you taking a more mature role in your household where your parents weren't necessarily being the parents, but they requested or required you to step up and assume a role where you were taking care of your siblings. And so what happens is that you develop a relationship context where you, as the child, again, learn how to be in a relationship where codependence may creep up. And so that becomes normal to you. And when you get older, codependence remains or continues to be present because that's what was developed when you were younger. So you got to be extremely mindful about deconstructing and reconstructing the framework that was created or instilled in you when you were a child.
Mm-hmm. All right, y'all, we're going to give you 3 ways that you can experience your environment, the people who raised you, your world as a young person, that will get you into this place of thinking that intimacy or closeness is dangerous. And again, it's not that you have to say it. You may not walk around saying that or even thinking that intellectually, but you need to pay attention to your behaviors, right? Because you can talk real warm and fuzzy, but be cold as ice, right? You really can. And so we have to be willing to look at what our behaviors show us. So number 1, we only got 3 tonight.
Yeah.
Do, 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 do.
That don't mean I might not throw in a few more. All right. So number 1, y'all. So the way in which, you show that you're afraid of intimacy is really based off of the way your caretakers treated you. They made you feel neglected. They made you feel disapproved of or rejected. So fundamentally, when you were a child, you felt like you were unloved. So you're afraid of intimacy because as a child in your formative years, you felt like you were unloved. And so as a result, when you choose to be in a relationship with the partner that you're in a relationship with, you're kind of gun shy, you're trigger shy because you don't want to fully commit because you don't know what real love looks like. You don't know what being fully loved looks like because you felt like you were unloved as a child and there were risks that were attached to you exposing yourself and you being vulnerable to your caretaker. So as a result, in this relationship right here, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're unloved again because what that is rejection. Nobody wants to be rejected.
And see, the thing is that it's easy for children to feel that way. I mean, if you really think about it, this really cannot be overemphasized. Children take everything that their parents say personally. They just do. They take everything they say personally and absorb it into their being. And that's why it's so important for us as adults to pay attention to what we're saying. And we're not going to be perfect. So even when we mess up, to go back and be like, I was wrong. I've had to do that. My husband,
we got 5 children.
We got 5 kids, right? So we have to go back and say, like, I was wrong, I was frustrated, whatever, because they take it in personally. And if you're taking in what your parents are saying personally, and you feel as though, even though they think they may be teaching you, they may be contributing to shaming you about some certain things, certain behaviors, certain expectations they have, so they're increasing shame in you, which happens a lot, particularly in African American community. It's like you need to show up and hit this target and meet this expectation, and when you don't do it, like you're wrong, you're a bad person. And they think that they're actually teaching you and showing you how to be a good person in the world, but they're actually implanting in you this kind of inherent piece of like, am I okay? You know what I mean? And feeling very shameful and feeling humiliated by them. If that's something that you feel, then that is your primary caretaker who loves you, and yet they're giving you this. And so then you transfer that onto your relationship as an adult. And in some ways are like, hey, I don't know if I really want to be able to open myself up here because I don't want to experience some of the same feelings that I felt as a child. You know, I mean, I think that's just really important for us to pay attention to as kids. Kids take everything personally, and so did you.
And so, you know, if kids take everything personally and you felt rejected as a child, you felt neglected and you felt unloved, what does that lead to? I mean, that leads to the possibility of you engaging in surface relationships. Again, because you don't want to risk being vulnerable and being hurt. And you don't know, you know, whether or not that person is somebody that can be dependent upon, somebody to be trusted, somebody who's going to love you unconditionally. So as a result, again, you engage in surface relationships, or you jump in, and to use a crass term, balls deep. You jump in.
Really?
You jump in, and you do so because you're searching for what you didn't get in your childhood.
You lost me there, brother. You lost me. You know, I want to say this. I was looking at my notes here. Where was it? Because I'm forgetting. Oh, you know, if you have a parent, and oftentimes this does happen. I only can speak about, you know, for the most part, the African-American community, because that's the community I grew up in. So that's what I'm referencing almost all of the time. In our community, especially if you were raised by a single parent, and even if it wasn't just a single parent, but your parent is out here trying to, you know, make things happen and hold things together and put food on the table and keep the lights on and make sure that you have what you need, then they're often not what? What are they not, Mickey? Tell me, Tamika, they're not what? Available. They're not available to you. So when they're not available to you, even though, you know, we learn as we grow older, like, look, I'm out here trying to make sure you have, you know, clothes on your back. And when we become adults, we understand the importance of that and how our parents sacrificed. How we experienced it as a child is that this person who we love and loves us, our parent was not available. They were not able to prioritize us. We were not important enough, right? If they were really trying to make things happen and kind of focused on goals for themselves, they're maybe a bit self-absorbed, right? You know, then the experiences, even though you're trying to get it for us as a family, it really wasn't about me. It's all about whatever it is you're talking about. And so then in terms of how that shows up in your life as an adult, will you open up yourself to be vulnerable in your relationship? Will you go beyond an arrangement? Or are you not going to do that? Because what my blueprint showed me is that the way to be in a relationship is that I love you and you love me. And we work things out and we do certain things, but we don't really fully connect in, because where did you do that as a child? Where did you do that as a child? When did y'all spend time as a child? What did that look like? Versus just kind of like coming in and out of the house and going to school and going to work and doing things and maybe going to an event here or church or whatever. And when did that happen as a child? So what do you have as a model? Mickey says that her family, the family was not affectionate. And so that absolutely drives how you function as an adult. And then Tamika, I love what you said. Tamika says, or, you know, they're home, but they're not present. You know, and let me tell you something. My husband and I, you know, I would dare jump out there.
What you about to say?
I know you like what you about to say. Because I'll try to name it and he'd be like, I don't know if I want to name it yet.
No, I mean, I'm fine with naming it. I'm fine with naming it.
The one thing not one thing, but we have lots of things in common. But one of the things that I feel like my husband and I have in common is that his father is a workaholic and my mother is a workaholic. You know, they out here in these streets moving, going, right? And so we know about workaholics is there's something that you're trying to fill, right? And we're not going to get into all of that, but fundamentally, whatever you've experienced, then you struggle, if you have some awareness, to not recreate that in your own life. About that, you recreate what's familiar to you. So oftentimes, because what are we? Stone cold hustlers. You know what I'm saying? Like my husband and I are trying to get it. Like we're trying to make sure that we're doing things for our family. We're trying to build this business. You know, you're making me nervous about what you're going to do. You know, and so our children said, like, you're always on the computer. Anybody heard that? You know what I'm saying? Being home and not present is real. I love it. That's true. I don't love that, but that's real. You know, Julia, she's being real tonight. Julia said, this is why my relationship is ending now. Julia, you gotta say some more about that if you feel so inclined. Lynn said, you have hit my life on the head from my childhood on up. Yeah. See, and so and mine too. You know, my mother, you know, my father and everybody, I mean, they love me and they, you know, but they out here in these streets trying to make it do what it do. You know, your daddy wasn't always around, but your daddy was around. But then he was gone. And then, you know, I ain't gonna speak for you because I know you're still in process. Yeah. So I just think that, why you shaking your head? I said, I'm not gonna speak for you. That was correct, right?
You already spoke.
You say I tried to like you speak for somebody. I'm take it back. Yeah. I'm gonna put it out there and I'll take it back. So I didn't mean to do that. Mm-hmm. This is my wine. You have anything you want to say? No, I mean, I don't want to. Jump all
not
over.
In reference to that point, but what I do want to say is that, you know, at an early age you learn, or some of us have learned that some of us have established or found ourselves in a transactional relationship with our parents. And so it's almost as if like
transactional.
Yeah, transactional relationship. And so it's almost like we found ourselves in a space or a situation where we got to barter with our parents. You know, so I heard somebody tell me before, like, you know, well, actually, I heard somebody say, like, my children told me that I'm always out here just trying to make money. And then this person, they said, you know, you want the devices that you got, right? You want the PlayStation, the Xbox, and the et cetera, the shoes, the clothes and stuff that you got, right? So it becomes a transactional relationship. And you know, not to say that that relationship is exclusively confined or about that, but we got to make sure that we're being extremely mindful that intimacy is not just about a transaction. Intimacy is about you actually connecting in and going deeper than the surface of a transaction. And it's about you connecting in with the person, the unmet need, the why, you know, the spirit, the energy, the soul, the essence of the person, and understanding what makes that person tick. It's not about me exchanging my time for you to give me this. It's not about me necessarily, you know, me rubbing you on the back for you to give me something at the end of the day. What it's about is me connecting in with you because I love you and because I want to get to know you and be with you versus trying to get something from you.
You smell good.
Oh, do baby? Oh, thank you, bro.
So, all right. So that's number one. What was it? We talked a long time on that joint. You only got 3 tonight.
Yeah, we got 3. So we about to hit number 2, y'all. Please share this video. Please share this video. It's not too late. Point? So the point was that your caretakers, they treated you in a way that made you feel neglected, disapproved of, rejected, or unloved.
Unloved. That whole piece of being unloved. All right, I was like, well, we just went down a whole whatever. What is that?
David said, should I get a pull-out couch?
I don't like to pull out. What?
I missed the second part of that.
Okay.
I think he might say, I don't like the pull out.
Okay, I don't know. Let's just move on. So Julia says, I want intimacy, but I can't give it because I was raised in protective mode. So I just want to challenge you to shift some of your language, and don't say you can't give it, but you have chosen not to. Even because you need to prove those messages.
No, I don't.
Oh, don't?
I blocked that person on purpose.
Oh, what they were saying?
It was spam.
Oh, okay. So I want you to, Julia, think about the fact that you have chosen to, and oftentimes when we are initially choosing, it's not through full awareness, but you've chosen not to have the intimacy or not to make the steps or take the steps that you could take so that you can have a different experience. It's not that you can't. Right? Because the difference between having a close, intimate, sweet, successful relationship and not, it's really taking a risk. It's really like, I'm just going to do it. It's having the courage to do it. It's generating the courage and doing it in the midst of feeling really, really bad. And I say feeling really bad because when I'm taking this, whatever, it does not feel good. I don't feel like, oh, I'm winning. No, I don't. I feel vulnerable and actually feel like I'm ready to fight. Oh, that's good. I feel when I get into a vulnerable place, I feel like I'm ready to fight. So I may get more agitated. I may be a little more aggressive. Even with my husband, not physically, but, verbally and that kind of thing. And so
you be putting your guards up. You be putting dupes up.
Yeah, because I feel more vulnerable. But I'm pushing myself through. But as I push myself through, like going there, I actually have to really be conscious of regulating myself because I really feel like, come for me. Come for me. I'm coming for you. You know what I mean? And so that's normal. That's a part of the process. That's okay. But you have to be willing to push yourself through it, and have that awareness. Because I can say to my husband, I feel like, you know, like real, like I'm ready, like you know, you better watch it. You know what I'm saying? It's not about you. You know, it's not about you. This is all me. So I'm gonna own that, but that's where I'm at right now. You know, he can say, well, let's just come back to this later, or there's no way around it but through it. So thank you for letting me know that. And, you know, let's keep moving and try to get through this conversation. So you have to be willing to push yourself through and have the courage to do it. Abandonment, as I know most of you know, Fine 29 says she can relate, but she tends to withdraw. Yeah, and that's definitely, you know, a coping mechanism that you know, many folks lean on, is withdrawing. Abandonment is a real big issue, and for anybody who's followed me for any length of time, or we've, you know, been in a group together or whatever, been online together, you know, the abandonment thing is big for me, because my biological father, you know, typical story, was not around like he should have been, was on and off, whatever, and so there are a certain fraction of people that when they have that sense of abandonment, and I'm talking about, you know, daddy not being there, but it could be, you know, mama not being there.
This as number 2?
Yeah, this number 2. I'm talking specifically about abandonment. So we talked about rejection and neglect and that kind of thing, right? And being present, but not really present. But I'm talking about particularly experiencing your parents early on as abandoning you. And that can happen in any number of ways. You know, you can have somebody can be ill in the family, and the parent has to always kind of tend to that person, and they're not there with you. And even though they have no choice on some level, right, it feels like abandonment. Or it can be like my daddy, who just was, you know, not about his business, and he was just he would just say he'd come in to pick me up on the weekends, because my parents were divorced when I was younger, and he didn't show up, right? Like it can be any number of ways, but a certain fraction of even death can be experienced as abandonment, right? You know, absolutely, death can be experienced that way. But a certain fraction of people resolve. You hear the word I'm using? Resolve. RESOLVE. Resolve to never allow themselves to be emotionally dependent again. I'm not doing it. They shut it down. Period. And you see how animated I got with that? Because that was me. And this man came into my life and helped me to break through that. But when you get to that place where you have been wounded in such a way that it hurts you at the very core, and you just say, you know, and again, it wasn't like I consciously said that, but I recognized that at some point as a young adult, actually as a teenager, because my mother put me in therapy, I recognized that as a 15, 16-year-old, that I just resolved. No, and I was fine with that. And you hear, you know, I do groups all the time, and I hear women say to me like, yeah, I'm not going there. Like, we can, you know, I still want to have a man. You know what I'm saying? I still might even want to get married one day, but you're only going to get but so far. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to have myself taken advantage of again. I'm not going to do that. And they're okay with that. And that's the language that they use. But I want to tell you, if that's you today, that kind of perspective and outlook, yes, it keeps you protected, but it keeps you lonely. Yes, it keeps you guarded and safe on some level, but it keeps you disconnected, because there is a level of intimacy and a level of closeness and caring that you can have that you will never, ever, and you can die and never know it. You can die and never experience it. And the only way that you can experience it is to break down that hardcore resolve to like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going there. And if I could do it, because I am a recovering aggressaholic, you could do it too. You can do it too. So abandonment and this resolve to never be emotionally dependent again, you got to examine that, because many people are married or in committed relationships and they feel justified and righteous in that, and even teach that to their children. Yes, you can be with someone, but do not be dependent. You know, you do want to have some level. I do depend on my husband emotionally. It's not healthy to say I don't depend on him emotionally. I just depend on myself. And so we kind of we're all twisted up. You know what I'm saying? When people think like, no, that's not good. Don't do that. You don't need to depend on, like, y'all can be together, but don't go there. No, you do want to be able to depend on your partner emotionally. What the hell is the point of the damn relationship? If I can't depend on you emotionally, right? And then what is it? It's an arrangement. It's an arrangement. And so we gotta challenge ourselves, and that stuff that's hard. It takes time. Change is incremental, but you at least got to be on the path to trying to change that, and not think that that's an okay way to be to begin with.
So my wife, she spoke about the whole abandonment piece, and a lot of this is really responses to an experience of trauma. What we're speaking about are trauma reactions, reactions to an experience of trauma that impacted you in such a way where you decided that I'm gonna put my guard up. You're not gonna get me next time. And so what I want to ask you all, I mentioned death a moment ago. And so what I want to know from you all, whether it was through somebody that you experienced, somebody that you knew, had a relationship with, or even if it was a vicarious experience, what in reference to death, have any of you all made the decision to shut a part of yourself off, close a part of yourself up, based on the fact that somebody that you knew passed away? I want to know if there's anybody that's out there who made the decision, conscious or unconscious, or you find yourself in a space right now where I'm unwilling to connect based off of the fact that I really don't want to risk losing anybody else. Is there anybody out there that's had that experience or that's currently in that space?
You get some hearts right there. Because, not wanting to lose somebody, not lose something, that's rooted in childhood as well. And if I don't have to risk losing, then I can stay safe. So I won't even connect in. Then I don't have to risk losing.
Yeah, so I lift this up, y'all, because I've actually found myself in this space where, based off of a childhood experience, I see you, Michael, based off of a childhood experience, and it wasn't even somebody that I knew. I mean, it was a friend of mine, and he actually was just sharing a story. And this is when I was like
walking across the street.
Yeah, this is when I was a crossing guard. One of my fellow crossing guards, this is when I was in like the 4th or 5th grade. He shared a story with me about how his parents went out to dinner one day, and they never came back home. And so that story just like stuck in my mind, and as a result, it impacted me in such a way where I think that I probably put up a wall internally that prevented me from, connecting in and getting close with people the way that I possibly could. And even in adulthood, losing some dear friends, I've noticed that I've actually unintentionally pushed some people away, because that's a painful thing, y'all. It's really a painful thing to lose a friend, to lose a loved one,
especially parents,
to lose parents. It's a painful thing. And, but as my wife just mentioned, I mean, really to access intimacy, you got to step into that space of discomfort and really be vulnerable in order to get to the intimacy they want. So whether it be in your intimate partner relationships, whether it be in your friendships, I know for a fact that losing some friends has impacted my ability and my willingness to connect with some people, whether it be peers, whether it be relatives, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my own work that I got to do. And so I'm encouraging you all to take up the mantle and do your work as well.
And fundamentally, guys, I just want to say this, oftentimes what we do is we try to control when we find ourselves in those situations, we try to control our environment. Mm-hmm. So we try to control, like, basically by not connecting in with people or, limiting, how much we, open ourselves up. We try to limit our exposure and our risk, right, mm-hmm. to being disappointed or to experiencing pain or whatever. And ultimately, the place that you want to get to is where you actually recognize that you can handle it. Whatever comes your way, you can handle it. Mm-hmm. And don't let me go to church on you. God will not put anything on you before you that you're not able to handle. And so we oftentimes try to resist going to a place that, you can handle it. You can. And so it's not about, can I trust this person? It's not. It's, can you trust yourself? It's less about me trusting Aize, and it's less about him trusting me. It's more about us trusting ourselves to commit to this relationship, to give everything that we have, despite all of the disappointments we've had in our lives, all of the things that have not come through for us, the way parents have disappointed, the way people have disappointed us. And we're still going to open ourselves up. And yeah, I do trust this man. He does trust me. But fundamentally, Do I trust myself? Trust myself that I'm able to, like, I'm going to be all right no matter what, that I'm not going to shrivel up in a ball and die if something happens to mess this up, that I will be able to sustain it, and I will be able to sustain myself. When I say it, I mean myself, that I'll survive. I'll survive. So that's the challenge before you, is to really recognize that the work is always with you. It's not with someone else. All right, here's our last one for the night. Whose turn is it? It's your turn or my turn? It's your turn.
It's my turn?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The last one, this is, again, if you're just joining us, we're talking about reasons why intimacy may feel dangerous to certain people. Not certain people, a lot of people. Why it may feel dangerous, and how that is kind of based on our childhood DNA and our blueprint, right? Even with parents who are well-meaning, well-intentioned, you know, and just things that happen in our lives. My husband just talked about, you know, being a crossing guard and having a kid tell him something, and that being a life-changing moment for you. Yeah. And you've held on to that, right? So we're trying to share this with you tonight because, again, you don't have to hold on. You can let go at any point in time. It is a decision. It doesn't mean that the feelings that you have, the fears that you have will automatically dissolve, but you really can choose. I'm letting go of that. I can't be bound by that, because I need to be able to put my full self in this relationship, to take the full, complete risk, to feel love totally, right? And risk whatever it feels like, you know, to be in that place. I'm going to do that. And you again, you can make that decision. You don't have to keep staying in that same place. When we know our issue and we're able to articulate it, and we still stay in that place, we are responsible for the stagnation that we have in our emotional lives. I see Michelangelo said, I lost my grandmother, who was a mother before my eyes, and it always made me want to be able to save people. See that connection. Being able to make that connection is important. Janet says, I lost my uncle 6 months ago. Oh, and it's in her profile pictures. Y'all look for Janet here on the thread. Give her some love. She said, it devastated me. And yes, I was shutting down. And, you know, there is a time to shut down. There is a time to close it up. There is a time to grieve, and a time to open up, right? So there's nothing wrong with doing that, but you can't stay there. If you found that you stayed there, wherever, you know, whatever that means for you, then, you know, you have some more work to do. Yeah. All right, so number 3, this is our last one for the night.
Yeah, again, it's not too late to share, so please do so. And thank y'all for all of the people who have shared thus far. So number 3, y'all, really what this one speaks to right here in terms of you avoiding intimacy or not really feeling the whole intimacy piece is really if you found yourself in a relationship in your formative years where your parent, they engulfed you. They, you know, essentially
absorbed.
Yeah, and fundamentally absorbed you and made you responsible for their success. They made you a part of who they are to such a degree where you've, to some degree, lost some sense of self-identity.
This is kind of that codependent stuff.
Yeah, right? It is. It is. And I've actually heard some people coin it as an emotionally incestuous relationship.
Ooh, say that again.
An emotionally incestuous relationship.
That just...
And yeah, it's yucky, it's messy. And again, in that type of situation, what's happening is that the parent is making the child responsible for their happiness. And so this impacts your willingness to be intimate in your relationships, because you feel as though like you're always on a yo-yo. Like you find yourself in a space or a situation where you have no sense of self-identity. Your identity is predicated based on the happiness of other people.
Because you related to parent that way.
Yes, your parent created that dynamic where, again, their happiness was based off of what you did for them. And as a result, in your current relationship, you think that your happiness is based off of what it is that you do for your partner. So again, that emotionally incestuous relationship, or that type of engulfment that was experienced in your formative years, is impacting you in such a way where you're afraid to be intimate now because, again, you don't understand who it is that you are and what your responsibility is in the relationship.
And a lot of times folks who have dealt with this deal with anxiety, because feeling that level of responsibility as a child for somebody else's feelings, how they feel and their happiness, you know, your parent is looking to you, be the man in the house, be the little man, whatever, or they're crying because they're upset about whatever has happened. They don't have bill money, or, you know, the daddy is, you know, not doing what he's supposed to do, so mommy is upset. And you want to protect, and you want to make make things okay, then it creates anxiety in you because that's too much for you to carry. And so when you become an adult and you're in a relationship, you're like, I'm not trying to take on all that responsibility. You may not even be consciously aware of it. I don't want to be responsible for that. So you keep a distance because I cannot do all of that because you feel swallowed up and consumed. And again, my husband used the term engulfment. Engulfment is what it is. Engulfment is the absolute opposite of abandonment, right? But it is no less abusive. It is no less abusive. It is abusive to be in that kind of a dynamic. It's just the opposite side of the coin. It's the opposite side of the coin. So you know, I
like what Queen P said. She said it was like I always had to do well in school and not make mistakes. Like and you know, for real, if we're always walking on a straight line, then we're not being our most authentic selves. You know, nobody is perfect. And so we all deviate from the norm. We all deviate from the line every now and then. If you find yourself in a position where you have to constantly stay on that dotted line or stay on that straight line, then where is there room for you to be you? Where is there room for you to mess up? Where is there room for you to, you know, color outside of those lines and really express your most authentic self? If there is no room there, then again, it impacts your ability to be intimate in your relationship, because intimacy is about you being vulnerable. And you being vulnerable is really about you coloring outside of the lines. You can't be vulnerable and you can't be intimate unless you're willing to deviate and do something different than what's necessarily expected of you or what the norm is considered to be. Because again, the norm is your thoughts, your experience, your desires, your emotions and stuff. They may be different than what it was that your upbringing suggested that they should be. And so you got to make sure that you're creating room for you to be able to express your most fullest self in order for you to show up and to be intimate in your relationship.
So a couple of things to close out tonight is this. You know, everybody who's been listening tonight, there's something that probably resonated with you. I saw you all making comments like, oh yeah, that's me, or I get that, or I felt like this, right? Or you gave examples of certain things that you experienced. I want you to be able to connect the dots between what you experienced as a child and how that shows up in your relationship in you now. Again, we started out by saying, are you self-protective or are you vulnerable and open? And you can be too much of either. You know what I'm saying? We always are talking about be vulnerable, right? Because that's what we think helps us, and it helps people who really want to grow. You got to just take a risk and put yourself out there and be honest, but you can also do that too quickly and do it without using discernment, right? So you need to recognize, first and foremost, this is the thing I want to give to you, is become aware of what it is. Become aware of what it is that you're protecting yourself against. If you're acting in ways in your relationship as you pay attention to these things that we talked about tonight that don't really serve the relationship, they're not really serving you or your partner, or maybe you're not with nobody right now, but you kind of see how you might push people away or whatever it is. What is that about?
Yeah.
What is that about? Because some of us are going to say, yeah, that's me, but we don't really know where that comes from. Let's get clear about it. You may have to go back and review some of your childhood. We always say counseling is good, so you can go back down memory lane, but you got to be ready for it, because most of us are trying to avoid it. Right? You got to be ready for it, but you want to be able to find out, were you neglected somewhere? Again, it's not were you neglected. Let me change that. It's did you experience whatever happened to you as neglect? That's not making your caretaker the bad guy. That was your experience. You have two kids in the same house, experience the same thing. One person, it's fine. The other person experiences it as neglect, right? And so you know what I'm saying? You don't have to, it's okay for you to name what it is for you. And it doesn't make your caretaker the bad person. People just stay stuck because they don't want to say that their mother, their father, their caretaker was bad or didn't do something. Look, you're an individual. You're unique. God made you that way. So be able to name that. What is it for you? Were you hurt? Were you shamed? Were you feeling abandoned or dominated or kind of like, you know, not recognized or seen? Did you feel consumed or engulfed? What is it? And when you can get clear about what that is in your childhood that you experienced, then you can figure out that's what you're protecting yourself against in your grown-ass relationship. That's what you're protecting yourself against. And when you get clear about that, then you can say, all right, how does that show up? What does that look like? And then the moment you can start to pick out certain times, certain instances, circumstances, you know, around this area, I can be kind of like this. You know what I'm saying? I can get a little extra because I'm ready. Like, you know what I'm saying? You're not about to like take me over, but you're responding to what you experienced in your childhood. Then you can start to put some strategies in place. And the first strategy is to just pause. Just pause and be quiet. Dun, 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 dun. Just pause and be quiet. Once you identify it, as soon as you see it, just say, I just need a minute. I just need a minute. That's all I say. I need a minute. And a minute might not be a minute. That joint might be forever. Man, I ain't coming back to talk about it because I just like went into myself, got to go write in my journal, whatever. But just pause and learn how to be quiet so that you can, really take in the opportunity to do something different. And before you can actually do something different and be all like, oh, you know what? I think that I was triggered because when you did this, it reminded me of unconsciously the fact that when I was little, you ain't doing all that, right? The first thing is just be quiet. I need a minute or 2 or 3 or 4. And when you can do that, that's the pathway to starting to become more aware and then doing something differently. Because I'd be damned if we sit on this daggone live stream with y'all week after week and y'all take this and be like, this is so good. Yeah, you know what? I like so-and-so's comment. That was good. And then you go and you do the same darn thing. Come on now. Yeah. It's all about action. But it's an achievable, accessible, you know what I'm saying, step that you can take that is actually doable, and that is just pausing. So I think we're done. I know you got something you want to say.
No, I mean, I just want to say that it's important to be honest and be real and be your most authentic self. When you're attempting to achieve intimacy in your relationship, and so it's again, like my wife just mentioned, it definitely is achievable, but you got to be intentional about it, y'all. I mean, this thing ain't gonna happen on accident. Right. It really is all about the action. Yes, Brian, bro. Yes, it really is all about the action. And, sometimes people overcomplicate what's required in order for you to experience intimacy in your relationship. I'm going to tell y'all one thing. Let me see this real quick.
Oh, I just clicked her.
I'm going to tell y'all one thing y'all can do to experience intimacy in your relationship. And this right here is really based off of the fact that it's based off of something that actually has caused challenges. And don't worry about that. In many relationships, it's caused challenge in a number of different relationships.
You about to try to take y'all down a lane.
Yeah, I am. I'm about to take y'all somewhere because this right here, this thing right here has blocked a number of people from experiencing intimacy in a relationship.
You trying to set yourself up for the night?
I'm not. But I'm not.
So I just want to ask you. Okay.
Give me 1 second. This right here. I'm gonna let this ad play real quick.
You got to pause it. I mean,
yeah, I'm gonna let this ad play.
No,
I'm gonna skip this ad. But this right here. So this right here, this is the reason why many of y'all ain't experiencing intimacy. Let me know if y'all familiar with this.
Do you hear it? Can y'all hear this?
Let us know if you can hear it.
Yes, Tamika, be intentional.
Yes, be intentional. And you could be intentional by doing this right here.
The hell?
Doing this one simple.
I can make you put your phone down.
People need to put their phones down, huh?
People need to put their phones down.
I can make you
put your phone down.
When you finish with this, get up off this phone.
Yeah,
you want to be on your phone.
But you know what? The beautiful thing about this though is that she said, I can make you put your phone down. So are you willing to make your man put his phone down? Are you willing to make your woman put her phone down? What are you going to do to make your partner put their phone down? You got to be intentional about that. That's a pathway to intimacy. It definitely is. It's a pathway to intimacy. But what are you willing to do? You put my phone down?
Yeah, so we're talking about putting the phones down because we're going to be vulnerable and we're going to communicate. You said you know somewhere else.
No, I'm serious.
You know something like make you put your phone down. Like all that.
Yeah, make me put my phone down, man.
I can. By telling the truth. You know what I'm saying? Somebody said, you two gonna get ratchet now? Not quite.
Somebody said, hell yeah.
All right, guys, this has been good. This evening has been really, really good. I hope that this has really resonated with you on some level and that you are willing to do something with the information that you've received from us, from others here on the live stream. Every Thursday, we are here talking to you about relationships. Relationship Thursdays. I'm tired. Y'all, we're out. Remember, none of this is going to matter. None of this is going to stick if you are not willing to stop playing And what?
Start pushing, y'all.
Start pushing, y'all.
Put your phone down.
Put your phone down. Bye. Bye, Lynn.